I measure it not with the time or the amount of, the way I won it's the way I won the race which is more important, not the time or the 10 hours off Jasmine. Like, that makes a massive headline, but like for me personally, there's only stuff that like me and Jess know about that like went on in that race, which like I'll take like literally to the grave with me. So like no one knows that, and no one will know that, and those things can't be measured by a headline or a Strava profile, and that's what's like most important.
To know who Jack Scott was.
Silly sausages.
So how have you, I know you obviously since then you've done this amazing feat of endurance. You've taken the record down, the Spine Race winter record down to 72 hours and 55 minutes and 5 seconds. So that's more than 10 hours off Jasmine's time that has been thought for years to be untouchable. And you brought it down by 10 hours. How much has life changed in these last couple of years then, since we got to know each other?
Do you get recognised much?
Yeah, one guy in the gym on Wednesday, he's like, I'm not a runner, but I heard about this race. I heard there was a lad from Stoke doing it, and we had a nice chat with him. I read every single message on the open tracking after. Had a bit of an emotional outburst. It's nice. It's nice to hear off people. Obviously, I've been very open with like the way I've lived my life when I was a young man. So I've had like loads of opportunities to help people with gambling and other issues. It's just nice that they can relate to me just being a normal person, I suppose.
Yeah.
You got to keep your feet on the ground. There's always someone bigger, faster, stronger, better. But if you can be the smartest, maybe you can have your day when it matters.
It's only evolved and changed in the areas that I've let it, to be honest. Like, my circle is still tight, my expectations are the same, and obviously you learn a lot through these training blocks, these training patterns, and just how life evolves based around such an important event. But I think moving forward, I'm still the same person I was approaching the 2023 race. Listened, learned, failed in 2023. I had to look at it as a failure when I was reviewing the race, and that was a really interesting dynamic to go back and do what I did in 2024. So I'm just exactly the same. I don't think you can let the good ones pick you up and change your philosophy, and I don't think you can let the bad ones do that either. You've got to think sustainable, enjoyment levels, keep turning up the same person, be yourself. And we talk about like a comment that I've used before is like, what happens when the fitness runs out? Like, something else has to take over, and I focus on that something else. I've found that in endurance sport, when you're going beyond 32 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, it's that something else which needs to be the thing that props you up. Your fitness gets you there, something else takes over, and I work on that something else more than I cover miles.
Yeah, that's interesting, because anyone who's done any of the Spine races knows that you're in pain, but the pain kind of stays at the same level, doesn't it? And then it's mind that takes over.
Yeah.
But obviously this year you had a bit of a different lead up to the race with these injuries. So these 3 separate injuries that all came together in the space of 5 weeks, was it? And how did that because we know that you have a really strong mental game, how did that affect your race psychologically going into the race, knowing that you've had a different lead up and that things were different to previous years?
Yeah, I mean, reviewing 2023 how could I get back on the start line to win the race? I'd pictured this perfect, enjoyable, amazing winter training block, and unfortunately that wasn't an option. I got the work done at the specific times, but I really had to pinpoint them and literally wake up and be like, yeah, okay, this 40-mile training run is on tomorrow. Whereas before it'd be like, well, I'll build into that 7 days in advance and know my body will be fresh, where that wasn't an option. So I had to be versatile, I had to be tough, I had to be different and disciplined. All the characteristics you have to show in the race, I basically showed from, I picked up my first injury on November the 29th, 53-mile training run up to Tan Hill. Picked up my first injury then. And as soon as I left Tan Hill that day, the race had begun for me. Can I get to the start? The challenge had begun. Can I get to the start line fresh, happy, healthy, and not beat myself up too bad, whether that's psychologically or physically in training. Train smart and get to the start line with a chance, and I managed to figure that out. And to be honest, you saw the result and you saw the run and everyone saw me touch the wall, but the most satisfying thing for me is like when I was down in the trenches in the training block, I held it together and I managed to stay ahead of the line, and that's the most satisfying thing for me. Not the actual result, it was the person I was in the training when it was tough. Because when the race came round, how can I put it? I pictured doing it the hard way, like these injuries showing themselves, still pushing, still racing, and then when the race came around, like the injuries were gone, or I was on top of them in a way where they didn't manifest. So I was in dreamland. I was fresher than I should have been because I'd done probably 300 miles less in training. And then all of a sudden, in like say December the 15th, my head was in my hands thinking it wasn't going to happen, dreaming of this feeling, and then all of a sudden it's actually manifesting. And I was like, I'm going to make the most of this and run the whole bloody thing.
So you were saying?
Yeah, so Downsbanks Trig, this is my local mountain. You can see the Wrekin and Shropshire beyond on a clear day. When these trees are down a little bit lower, you can see Malcoff, the height, and then the highest point is Staffordshire, which is the Roaches just above Tittersworth Reservoir. I was born in Stafford, which is, you can see again on the left. And then I grew up in Coldmeath, which is a tiny little, literally a road with just a couple of houses, and that's just hidden in one of these little dips. I think this trig's 180 metres.
So how did you?
Best we've got.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you utilise this for spine training then?
I mean, it's not even just spine training. It's just like if I've been trail running for 5 years, this was just the place. This is just the place we come. So one of these climbs is sort of 250 foot. There's a really steep one which we can do later through there, which I've done something really interesting dynamic training on with the pack, sort of fartlek with the pack, and then maybe take the pack off and have like 2 dumbbells at the bottom and like power hike with the dumbbells, which is quite an interesting.
Power hiking with dumbbells.
Oh, we've got another dog. Yeah, that was something that Winnie, good girl. That was something that did happen. But also, like if you incorporate a session which is 10 times 2 minute hills, if you run around here, that session just becomes every single run, because every single run is, you know, you climb 2 or 3 minutes, you drop down, and then all of a sudden you've got to go to the next climb. So every single day is like a transition session, which me and my friend Hugh, who do a lot of fell running, we think that's, although the climbs aren't as big, we can get more climbs in and train that transition. So there's no point being good on the climbs if you can't do the downhill, and there's no point being good on the downhill if you can't maybe transition into a flatter area. So it's just been a bit of a sweet spot here.
So it's got a bit of everything around here then?
Yeah, it has.
But not, you've got to build up the elevation by doing repeats, I suppose.
Yeah, repeats, but there's literally, you know, there's probably like 12 ways up here, which is nice. And then this one, which will go down in a minute. That's really good, really steep.
Awesome.
This is all we've got, so we've got to use what we've got.
Exactly, yeah. psychologically, I know you run a very big psychological game, don't you, in your training and your racing?
Yeah.
How did those injuries, was it 3 injuries in the space of 5 weeks, how did they affect you mentally going into the race? Because I know you've always like bulletproof prepared, but for you, how did you sort of sort through that with your sports psychologist?
Well, it was extremely difficult, and there was some tough chats had with my wife and myself and Steve, my psychologist, who lives about a mile from here. And he had to. So before 2023, he did the Havening effect, where it was sort of, I believe I can run with Kim and Damien. Can I be competitive? Come here, lady. Good girl. Come here. Good girl. And this year, after I'd been up to the lakes with Innovate, and I'd done a photo shoot, and to be honest, I was running through these problems, and it was uncomfortable and not nice. I came back and I was not being the best husband or coach or anything. I was just in a bit of a weird spell. I went to see Steve, and he just shut the door, and he literally flushed out me, and it was quite an emotional thing to accept and deal with what was going on. But perfection doesn't exist in this sport. It's not, you can't, if you can do things 7 out of 10. And he just made me believe that I was still in control, I was still on top of it. And I just needed like a big burst of emotion about it all, because I thought it was gone, like I said. But Steve just made me see that the 5 weeks haven't been ideal, but you've got 5 years behind you, and you've got momentum behind you. Just had to trust that feeling.
Talk us through how the race unfolded, because I wasn't
still figuring that out.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I was there. I was in the same race, completely different race to the one you were having.
Yeah.
So I heard little bits and bobs as the race sort of unfolded about what was going on, that you were behind, that Kim was ahead.
Yeah.
A few of us thought, oh, maybe Kim has actually like put it together for the first time, rather than the trouble he's had with DNF in that race a few times. How did it sort of because now looking back it looks like it unravelled perfectly, but how did the race pan out for you, as far as how you expected it to go and how it worked out?
Well, obviously conditions were favourable. There was 10 elite runners at the start who, like, credentials were pretty strong. John Kelly's, in my opinion, is the best at that in the business on the planet. Damien Hall's had incredible success, and I wasn't delusional. Like, these people are still better than me, and they've had continued consistent success, which is what I'm after. Kim again has got some incredible accolades. Before the race, I know I didn't do any media or anything. Once I was over the cusp of the hill and I was happy and healthy to some extent, I didn't need people telling me how ready I was, how crap I was, how little training I'd done. I didn't want to even, I had a bit about me, and I didn't want to show anything. I was just ready to rock and roll and suffer and enjoy what was going to go on. And I suppose the race evolved as I thought. It was a fast start. There's a picture over, I've got it in the living room, over Kinder Scout. I'm leading the way with John and Damien, and we're sort of 50 minutes above record pace already. It's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty straightforward race to Hebden, and then you head into the night section. One thing I did notice earlier on, I did think John was struggling. He was sweating. He wasn't moving as well, and he looked a little bit out of control. And I acknowledged that and thought, interesting. Let's see how the race develops there. And obviously he had a turn for the worst before Thornton, before the pub there, which is where I dropped out in 2020. So good memories running past that in good shape. Really started to bite, and I couldn't really feed the effort when you're sort of on the flatter section between Gargrave and Malham. We were running, 9:30, 10-minute mile, 9:30 with full packs on after 80 miles. It was ridiculous. Got into Malham, I dropped back slightly, got into Malham, and I lost composure for a minute. The shield was down, and I thought, I just didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel right. Kim had left, and if it was me, Conrad, Kim and Damien there at that point, I was weak. I wasn't the version I wanted to be. And when you're around 3 really good runners, that's pretty hard to take. You know what I mean? Like, pretty hard to take that you're getting beaten up pretty bad. took control of my race there, slowed it down, let everyone run off like lunatics. There was definitely a wobble. I went in the little barn at the side of the checkpoint, and I was vomiting on the floor. Thought about the message I was going to send Jess saying you were right, it was a mistake to come back, and then all of a sudden just resurrected myself and shut that down straight away. Those gremlins were gone, chased away, and just like, let this race evolve, stay in the race, keep your head above the water, and maybe you'll be blessed enough to have the opportunity to dictate the race later on.
So this is the infamous dumbbell hill.
Yeah. So I did it a little bit for the spine. I've done it in recovery. So I'd do 12 reps of this. One would be hard VO2 max. The next one would sort of be a surge session, which I've seen Killian and John Albon do, where they sort of bounce from foot to foot, but maybe hold the position for a microsecond and then jump. And then the last one would be I'd have some dumbbells here, and I'd just power hike big strides up this. This is probably the steepest hill here. And if I was ever to do that famous race in Tennessee, maybe I'd do some hill reps on this as well. Yeah, it's a good tough climb. Winnie, come.
And then we leave the checkpoint together, me, Damien and James, and this is where like something special started to happen. Is I'm thinking, how can I win this race now? Like, I wasn't holding on, I wasn't in a bad way. I was like, finally, like the elite mindset is there, and I was like, how can I calculate this course now with Crossfell, with Dufton, with Ulston, with the Moor, with the Wall, Hadrian's Wall? How can I pull away from these people? How can I win this race? And like, I was in absolute dreamland. I was in dreamland. So I devised a plan to skip Dufton checkpoint, which I thought Damien would head into. So if I skipped Dufton, I knew he'd stop at Greg's Hut. One of the two. I skipped Dufton. I went in there, said hello. He went in there about 5 seconds ahead. Flustered him a bit. I just pulled straight out of the checkpoint. James had to drop back here. I think he twisted his knee on the descent down High Cup Nick. We all know how difficult that is. So I've left Dufton. I'm in the lead, and I hear this runner behind me. I'm thinking, is that Damien? Has he come with me? And as soon as I saw him, I was like, I'm in control of this race. Like, I am now pulling the strings. And I knew he'd need a cup of tea. I knew he'd need a cup of tea at Greg's Hut. So like, on the way up to Crossfell, the snow was pretty wild. We got through just before, like maybe 5 or 6 hours before they shut the course. I think this is Tuesday morning we're talking about now. I'm striding up there, like I'm literally running up Dunfell, I think. We get to the top. I've got a tiny lead on him, maybe a minute, and I decide not to put my crampons on, and I'm like in fell race mode. I'm just like, poof, I'm gone. Create a gap, really risky line to down to Greg's Hut in the snow, run straight past John, and then I just run down that road in the snow as fast as I can into Ulston, take control of the race, knowing that Damien would stop, and I believe he did. And from Ulston, I think I got into Ulston 50 minutes before Damien. Feeling pretty pumped but pretty composed. And John mentions that he's got a 78-hour schedule, and I'm 4.5 hours ahead of it, I think. And he's geeing me up and telling me like, you got to get out of here. Spend literally about 11 minutes there, and I'm off.
I think it's about 38%.
Yeah.
And obviously, like coming down it with dumbbells as well puts added pressure on different muscles, different groups. Knee stability, ankle stability.
Is this workout something you'd recommend for any of your coaching clients? With caution.
The dumbbell thing would have to be, it's a little bit sadistic, that is. I just wanted to do something different. The surges one is definitely one that people do. All about recovery on the move. Back to the trick, Sam.
Back to the trick.
into the snow on the Tuesday morning, and yeah, the rest of the race just worked as hard as I could, pulled on every single emotion, every single moment I've ever been a young man. Just ran. So like from Alston to the finish, I ran every step, and along Hadrian's Wall, I mean, I was running in tears along Hadrian's Wall. I was in such pain, and I was just like, you can run this, and like Damien can't. And I was just gapping him every single minute. And in the end, I just pulled away. Didn't trust any technology, didn't trust any trackers, didn't trust anyone's opinion. Just went old school and was like, I'm just going to run as hard as I can until I'm done. And that's what happened, and it's just absolute blessing.
So you weren't like curious to check the trackers, like get your phone out and see where Damo was?
No, I mean, I was asking people. Don't get me wrong, I did ask a couple of people what the crack was. Where is the Mohawk man? And then I remember when I got into Bellingham checkpoint, there was amazing vibes in there, and the screamers there on the right showed everyone where they were.
Yeah.
I didn't acknowledge it. Like, I took longer than I needed to at Bellingham. I was in there for about an hour, didn't sleep, did a bit of race admin, composed myself, and my body was still on side to run.
Really, I've learnt so much from the training. The psychological barriers, the physical barriers, the amount of gym work I was doing. It was an absolute blessing. And that like, as I go into different projects now, I've got loads of different knowledge, loads of different criteria to lean on. And it's never a simple equation, as you know. It's mad. Perfection doesn't exist, but God.
Well, your race was close enough to it from the outside, at least.
Yeah, and I didn't eat as well as I wanted to, but I controlled what I could. You know, at Malham when I was in a hole, and I thought about the message I was going to send my wife. Like, you know what, we have made a mistake coming back, because between the races, like, I spoke to my wife, you know, if I'm going back, I know what I've got to do. Like, I've got to win the race. And I didn't think I was ready for that, but as I recovered in 2023, I was like, you know what, if I want to have a career and if I want to be the runner that I believe I can, you've got to take risks, haven't you? And I spoke to Innovate, and they were like, you know, we'd love you to go back. And I invested myself, so like, Innovate paid half for the entry. I paid half because it was my decision. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to hide into nothing. Like, here's 1,200 quid, let me race. I was invested and I trusted it. But there was there was tears and question marks between me and my wife. But I just believed I was on the cusp of something. And then, thank God, we were
paid off.
Oh, yeah, paid off big time. Winning.
Awesome.
But I was just thinking about this race and like what it means to people, like what the Pennine Way is, and just sat there and I thought, I've done this for like people who like can't do it, and like it's good. Like in December, I was speaking to a coaching client called Grant who was suffering from some really interesting health issues, and he was like, you know, you've got an option to go up there and do what we all want to do, and like do something you love well, and like push. And I felt like a huge momentum of people behind me at just the right stage. Like, I opened my mind up to it, thought about like all my family, my boss at work who's like supported me and let me like do whatever I want, which is like compromises business. Friends that I've had to like let go because can't live that life anymore, and like don't see my best mate in London because I'm running around like a lunatic every weekend. And like that literally fueled me to like just make the most of this one mad day, of these three mad days, and really satisfying, like sitting at Hut 2 just like thinking for like 5 minutes about all that and being like, right, let's just tick off these last 2 climbs, 1,000 foot, really, but like in race, like a really appreciative time, because I knew when I hit the wall like it wasn't going to be like that. So I had it at Hut 2 and thought about Sylvie and thought about all these kind words and all this momentum I carried into the race. The most satisfying feeling I've ever felt in my life.
That's
class.
That's it's interesting you say that about not really feeling as much when you cross the line and you touch the wall.
Yeah.
the emotion that you've sort of described there of like everything coming together, I think that has to happen in the race, doesn't it? Because you do you consciously feed off those emotions?
Yeah.
Go and use them in the race.
Yeah.
Because everyone expects you to cry at the end, and some people do, don't they? A lot of people do. But I didn't. I mean, I was just glad to be done.
I was moving so well that like my mum and dad couldn't make up there in time.
Yeah.
So when I finished, I had a coaching client, Paul, who came down from sort of Dunbar, who lived maybe 45 minutes north. He came to watch me finish, and then obviously I went into the back room. But like, to be honest, my mindset at Long Adrian Wall was like work hard here, and like don't have to race the end. Like don't have Damien 2 miles behind, don't have Damien 3 miles behind. Obviously he was 10 hours behind, but enjoy the Cheviot's and find peace with like a 5-year project which has cost an amount of money that you can't even describe, a monumental amount of emotional time and suffering and good times as well, and like all the people I've let go in life because I need to like simplify my equation and become an athlete. And like over the Cheviot's, that was just like that, just all of that came to me. Like I wasn't thinking about what this would mean moving forward, like breaking this record and having success. I was just thinking about all those decisions I've made over the years. I had to like walk away from certain things and run away from certain things, and it was really satisfying. I just believed that I could be that guy, and I wanted to be that guy for myself, not for anyone else. What would I say? Be patient. Don't try and complete the race or the sport in 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. Extract everything you can from it. Let it seep into the other 22 hours a day when you're not training. And when the time comes, you know, there's clinical moments in these races, like Malham. You know, we couldn't be sitting here now. If I'd have just made that decision at Malham when I was like on the verge of flipping a coin and being like, yeah, I'm done. You've got to be there when it really matters. You've got to be sharp, and your fitness will get you there, and then there's something else will carry you through that, and train that something else. And I've managed to do that. And on the race, the key points would have been Malham, Middleton, the work rate along Hadrian's Wall. I was driving home and I was like, to my dad, I was like trying to express how hard I was working along Hadrian's Wall.
It's not easy.
It's so hard to get momentum.
To run on that section, I know full well.
Those are the key moments, and then just like being at peace at Bellingham and still pushing into Burness. They were key moments that will live with me forever, I guess.
So really, you're an example of someone who's come into the race. We call it failure, do we? Don't really call it a failure, DNF, do we? Not finishing. And then you've turned that on its head, and now you hold the record for that race. So
the interesting dynamic, Sam, is like if I like my mate Hugh, who like is my best friend, speak to him every day, got an amazing running relationship, friend relationship, family relationship with him. We entered the race together. He succeeded in 120 hours. I DNF'd and it hurt bad, like it hurt a lot. My best mate had just done something amazing, successful. I felt guilty. I felt like, why have I not finished, and he has. When I was at the Hut 2, like that came to me, like those feelings, those emotions, that momentum was there to be like sharp like that. And if I'd have finished in 120 hours in 2020, I wouldn't have gone. Would I have gone back? Probably not. But I just, like, they say everything happens for a reason. You have to manifest that and put that in the right place, in the right box for a certain time to move it back into the centre of your vision. So it's bizarre what happens in this world. Like, if I'd have finished in 2020 when I wasn't ready, I probably wouldn't have gone back and raced the way I did. Turning any negative into a positive, you can do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. But how does Hugh feel about the race now?
Honestly, I rang him on the way home, and because he gets it, like he understands, and his dad as well. And it was like the most amazing like I speak to my wife about it, and it's emotional and it's nice. But like people who've been through the ringer and they understand, and he's just like you said you could do this day, like his dad as well. He's like you said to me 2 years ago you're gonna like pump everything you've got into this, and that for me that wasn't like training loads. It was just everything, all the time in like my bloodstream, in my thought patterns. And his dad was like, you've done it, like this moment in time, you've made it. There's massive races in the world, that Western States, UTMB, Hard Rock, Conrad's, amazing feats of endurance happen everywhere. But at that moment in time, I had that feeling, I had that momentum, and I managed success. And to talk to those people on the way home, and Hugh got me a book, the Wainwright book, small book, and he's written a message in it which is like private, talking about like our relationship, and then like talking about the Pennine Way, and it's just like them things. Like someone could run 72:30, but like the passion I felt from people close to me about what I did, and like the hope it's given them, and just like the understanding it's given them is priceless. It's amazing. And like I've said, you don't have to win, you don't have to finish top 10, you don't have to finish 50th, 60th, 90th. Every single person can enjoy that in their own right. But for me this year, like the extremity was go and do something no one's ever seen. I'm blessed that it worked.
Absolutely, it did work, didn't it? And you'll always have that. You'll always talk about having your memories, but that you'll always have that. Regardless of whether someone drops the record, you'll always have that memory, won't you, of what you succeeded, the way you turned a DNF in 2020 into second place in 2023, and then new course record and the win in 2024. So that's a legacy, isn't it? That's going to be there for all time.
It's the way, like it was the hardest way, the most expensive way, but like it worked, and that was the way for me it was meant to be. I've been through hardship in my life. I put myself in that situation. I've made myself suffer, and now like I suffer in a different way for good, and to promote hope and to give people. Like my sister was watching it, and like she was talking about the inspiration. She was sitting there with her young son, Freddie. Like you can't measure that. You know what I mean? You can't measure that on Strava or on financially. Like, that stuff's just. And when I'm 60 and my kids are running around, Jess will be like, "Dad, you should do a bit of this. Dad, you should do a bit of that." That's just class. Really good.
Amazing. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and catching up and finding out bits about the race that that I didn't know, because I was in
the middle of the storm yourself,
buried in snow at the time, and it's amazing to see how far you've come from that first chat we had a few years ago to nobody knew who you were, to literally now the whole world knows who you are and what you've achieved. And you're a class act, and look forward to seeing what you do in the future, mate.
No, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak many moons ago when, like you said, no one really knew what I was about or the philosophy I'm trying to preach. Sorry we didn't speak before the race or after the race.
Don't worry.
But the fact you've done the home trail series, I know we mentioned the one with Jasmine, really enjoyable, really good, and you can feel things differently when you see it instead of audio. It's a really good idea, and you've got a great passion for the Pennine Way, which is, I appreciate that, because it's a special place, dude, for sure.
Definitely is. Jack Scott, appreciate the chat. Thanks, mate.